What if I told you that there is a single psalm, written over 3,000 years ago by a man who was drowning in enemies, in shame, and in what felt like absolute spiritual bankruptcy, and that this psalm, read with the right intention for just 2 consecutive nights, carries a power that the ancient sages described as capable of dissolving the spiritual chains that hold financial debt in place? Not metaphorically, not as a feel-good exercise, but as a genuine, mystical intervention rooted in the deepest layers of Torah wisdom that most people, even observant people, never access in their entire lifetime. I want to tell you something before we go any further. I have been teaching Torah for over 30 years. I have sat with people in hospitals, in courtrooms, at kitchen tables covered in unpaid bills, and I have seen things that I cannot explain with logic alone. I have seen debts that seemed impossible suddenly restructure themselves. I have seen doors open where there were only walls, and almost every single time, when I trace it back, there was a moment of genuine spiritual alignment, a moment where the person stopped fighting the physical problem with only physical tools and reached into something deeper. That is what I want to give you today. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I am going to share with you not just which psalm this is, but the specific method, the kavana, which means the intention, the timing, and the precise way this should be done. A method transmitted through generations of Kabbalistic tradition that you will not hear explained this way anywhere else. And I promise you, by the time we are finished, you will understand why debt is not merely a financial problem, and why the solution has never been only financial either. Here is what most people get completely wrong. They believe that debt is a money problem. They think that if they just earn more, or spend less, or find the right loan, the problem will be solved. And I understand why they think that, because that is the language the world speaks. But listen to me very carefully. The Torah does not speak that language. The Torah speaks the language of roots, and in that language, what we see on the surface, the debt, the bill, the creditor calling, that is not the problem. That is the symptom. The root is something else entirely. And until you address the root, you can shuffle money around for the rest of your life, and the cycle will not break. Let me tell you about a man named Elimelech. You may know his story from the book of Ruth. Elimelech was a wealthy man, a leader of his community in Bethlehem. When a famine came upon the land, instead of staying and trusting in the God who had given him his wealth, he took his family and fled to Moab, a foreign land, a land outside the covenant. The sages teach us that Elimelech's real sin was not leaving. It was the spiritual disconnection behind the leaving. He removed himself from the community that needed his leadership. He removed himself from the land that held the divine promise. And what happened? He died. His 2 sons died. Everything he had built collapsed. His wife Naomi was left alone, a widow in a foreign land, with nothing. But here is the miracle. The moment Naomi turned back, the moment she said, "I will return to the land. I will return to my people. I will return to my God," everything began to reverse. She returned with nothing but Ruth by her side. And from that return, from that act of coming back into alignment, came Boaz, came the marriage, came the redemption of the entire family line, came ultimately the lineage of King David himself. The reversal did not begin with money. The reversal began with a spiritual turning. This is what the Torah is showing us. The path out of lack always begins with returning to the root. And what is the root of debt in the language of the Kabbalah? The sages teach that financial constriction, what they called zimtzum shel parnasa, a contraction of livelihood, is almost always connected to a blockage in the flow of divine blessing. And that blockage has a spiritual name. It is called a klipa, which means a shell or a husk, something that covers the light and prevents it from reaching us. Now, I am not asking you to become a Kabbalist to understand this. I am asking you to understand one simple thing. There is a spiritual dimension to your financial reality. And if you only work in the physical dimension, you are fighting with one hand tied behind your back. This is where the psalm comes in. And before I tell you which one, I want you to understand something about King David that most people misunderstand completely. People think of David as a triumphant king, a warrior, a man of glory. And yes, he was all of those things. But the Psalms, the Tehillim, were not written in his moments of glory. They were written in his darkest hours. They were written when he was fleeing for his life, when he was betrayed by his own son, when he felt utterly abandoned, when his sins had caught up with him and he stood before God with nothing but his broken heart. The Psalms are the prayers of a man who had lost everything and found, in that exact moment of total poverty, a connection to the divine that no wealth had given him. And this is the paradox I need you to sit with for a moment. In Psalms 34, verse 11, David writes, and I want you to hear these words, "The young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing." The young lions, the strong ones, the ones with teeth and claws and power, they go hungry, but the one who seeks God, who truly seeks God, lacks nothing. David was not writing this as a theology. He was writing it as testimony. He had lived it. He had been the hunted one, the one with nothing. And he had discovered that in the act of total surrender and seeking, a door opened that no human effort could open. But here is where I need to stop you, because this is the mistake I see constantly, and I say this with love. Most people read Psalms the same way they scroll through their phone, quickly, passively, with half their mind on something else, and then they wonder why nothing changed. The Baal Shem Tov, the great founder of the Chassidic movement, taught something radical. He said that a word of Torah or prayer that is spoken without kavanah, without real intention and presence, is like a body without a soul. It may look like prayer, but it does not fly. It stays on the ground, and a body on the ground does not reach heaven. This is what changes everything. This is the secret that transforms the reading of a psalm from a recitation into a missile aimed directly at the spiritual blockage in your life. And I am about to give you that secret step by step. But first, let me tell you about something that happened in my own life that made this real to me in a way that no text ever could. Many years ago, I went through a period where everything in my financial life was collapsing at once. I had responsibilities. I had people depending on me. And I had debt that felt like a physical weight on my chest every morning when I woke up. I'm telling you this because I want you to know I am not speaking from a place of theory. I sat exactly where you may be sitting right now, and a very old rabbi, a man who had survived things I will not speak of here, sat across from me and said something I will never forget. He said, "You are praying to get out of your situation. Start praying from inside your situation and watch what happens." I did not understand immediately, but I went home and I opened to Psalm 130, and for the first time I did not read it as an escape. I read it as a cry from the exact place I was in. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Those are the opening words of Psalm 130, Shir Hamalot Mima Amakim, a song of ascent from the depths, and something cracked open in me that night. Not because the psalm had magic words, but because for the first time I brought my whole self to it, my fear, my shame, my desperation, and I aimed it all at God like an arrow. Within 2 weeks, a situation that had been completely stuck for almost a year began to move. I am not saying it was easy. I am not saying it was immediate. But the movement began from that night. And now I want to give you the practice. Listen very carefully because every detail matters. The psalm I want you to work with for 2 consecutive nights is Psalm 130. In Hebrew, it begins with the words Shir Hamalot Mima Amakim, meaning a song of ascents out of the depths. This psalm has 8 verses. It is short. It takes less than 3 minutes to read aloud. But those 8 verses contain something the Kabbalists called an aerial pathway, a direct channel that bypasses ordinary spiritual resistance and speaks directly to the source of blessing. Here is exactly how you do this. On the first night, you will do this after sunset, ideally within an hour before you go to sleep. Find a place where you will not be interrupted. It does not need to be a synagogue. Your bedroom is fine. Your kitchen table is fine. What matters is that you are alone and that you are still. Light a candle, if you have one, not because it is required, but because fire has always been the symbol of the divine spark in Jewish tradition, and it helps the mind arrive at the right place. Before you read a single word of the psalm, I want you to spend 60 seconds, just 1 minute, and name your debt out loud. Say it. I owe this amount to this person or institution, and I am carrying this weight. Do not be ashamed. Do not whisper it. Speak it clearly, because the Talmud in Tractat Berachot teaches that one of the most powerful things a person can do before prayer is to acknowledge the specific reality they are bringing before God. God knows everything, yes, but the act of naming it is for you. It roots you in honesty, and only from honesty can a genuine prayer rise. Then, and only then, open to Psalm 130. Read it aloud, slowly, and as you read each verse, I want you to hold in your mind not a picture of money, not a specific dollar amount, but the image of a door opening, a heavy door, one that has been sealed, and light coming through it. This is your kavana, your intention. You are not reading words. You are spiritually unlocking a door that your debt has closed. Read the psalm 3 times in a row. On the third reading, add after the final verse these words, spoken aloud in your own language. Master of the universe, I have read your words with my whole heart. I acknowledge that the source of all provision is you alone. I release my grip on fear, and I open my hands to receive what you have prepared for me. Remove from me every spiritual obstruction that stands between me and the flow of your blessing. As you redeemed Israel from Egypt with a strong hand, redeem me now from this place of constriction. Amen. Then close the book. Do not check your bank account. Do not think about the debt again that night. Go to sleep with the image of that door and the light behind it. This is critical. What you hold in your mind as you fall asleep is what your subconscious, and according to Kabbalah, your soul as it ascends during sleep, carries into the upper worlds with it. On the second night, you repeat the exact same practice. Same time, same place if possible, same candle. Name the debt again. Read Psalm 133 times. Say the same closing prayer. But this time, on the second night, after you close the book, I want you to add one more action. Write down on a piece of paper one thing you will do tomorrow in the physical world to address this debt. Just one thing. It can be making a phone call, writing a letter, setting up a payment arrangement, researching one option you have not explored. It does not have to be a big action, but it has to be a real one. Because the Talmud in Avodah Zarah teaches us that divine assistance descends along the path that a person first begins to walk. The miracle meets you in motion, not while you are standing still waiting for it. Now, I want to speak to something deeper here, because this is what most people miss. And if you miss this, you will do the practice and not understand why it works, even when it does work. Psalm 130 is classified in the tradition as one of the Psalms of Ascent, the Shir Hamalot. These are 15 psalms, numbered 120 through 134, and they were sung by the Levites on the 15 steps of the temple in Jerusalem. 15 steps ascending toward the Holy of Holies. Each psalm was a step upward, and Psalm 130 specifically, out of the depths, was understood by the sages to be the psalm of someone who is at the very bottom of the spiritual staircase, someone who has fallen so far down that they cannot even see the top. And the radical teaching of this psalm is that the person at the very bottom, crying from the depths, is actually in one of the most powerful spiritual positions possible, because they have nothing left between them and God, no pride, no self-sufficiency, no illusion that they can fix this themselves, just the raw cry of a human soul reaching upward. The Talmud in Tractate Beracho, page 32b, says that even iron gates cannot withstand the power of tears in prayer. Iron gates, not wooden gates, not thin walls. Iron. The rabbis were saying that when a person prays with genuine emotional depth, with what we call a lev nishbar, a broken heart, the spiritual blockages that seem absolutely impenetrable dissolve. And Psalm 130 is the psalm designed to bring you into that exact state of broken open prayer. This is why 2 nights matter. The first night is the breaking open, the acknowledgement, the cry from the depths. The second night is the consolidation, the commitment, the marriage of the spiritual work with physical intention. 1 night is a prayer, 2 nights in a row is a covenant, and in Jewish tradition, the covenant is where the real power lives. Let me tell you about a woman I know, I will not use her real name, who came to me 3 years ago. She was in debt that felt unsurmountable. She had been dealing with it for years, and every time she took 1 step forward, something knocked her back 2 steps. She was spiritually exhausted. She had stopped praying with any real belief. Prayer had become a habit with no fire behind it. I gave her exactly this practice. I told her what I have told you. She looked at me and said, "Rabbi, I have read 100 Psalms. Why will these 2 nights be different?" And I told her what that old rabbi told me. Because this time, you are not going to read it to get out. You are going to read it from inside. She called me 12 days later. I will not make this into a fairy tale. The debt did not vanish overnight. But she told me that on the second night, after she wrote down her 1 physical step, she had a thought about a resource she had never considered before. She followed that thought. It led somewhere. 3 months later, she had restructured everything and was breathing again. Did the psalm do that? The psalm opened the door. She walked through it. This is what I need you to understand as we come to the end of our time together. The psalm is not a vending machine. You do not insert 2 nights and receive a check. The psalm is a key, and a key without a lock means nothing. Your sincere intention, your honest naming of the problem, your willingness to also take 1 step in the physical world, those things are the lock. When the key meets the lock, the door opens, every single time. I have taught Torah for 30 years, and I have watched this principle operate over and over. The divine blessing is always seeking to flow toward you. Always. The Zohar, which is the foundational text of Jewish mysticism, says that the flow of divine abundance is like a river that is always running. What we call lack is not the river stopping. It is a dam, and the dam is made of our spiritual disconnection, our fear, our shame, our disconnection from our own inner life. The psalm, read with intention, breaks the dam. The water does the rest. Do not let this teaching sit in your mind as an interesting idea. That is the greatest danger. The greatest enemy of spiritual growth is not doubt. It is delay. It is saying, "That was beautiful, I will do it this weekend." Do it tonight. After this video ends, do not turn on another video. Do not check another screen. Find your quiet place. Light your candle. Name what you owe. Open to Psalm 130. Read it 3 times aloud. Say the prayer I gave you, and then sleep with the image of a door opening and light pouring through. Tomorrow night, do it again. Write your 1 step, and then take that step. If this teaching has touched you, if something in your heart has shifted even slightly, I am asking you to share this with one person in your life who is also carrying a financial burden in silence. You may not know how to help them. You may not have money to give them, but you can give them this. Share this video. That act of generosity is itself a spiritual step that will come back to you in ways you cannot predict. And if you are new here, please subscribe, because every week I bring you teachings like this one. Practical, rooted, alive teachings from the depths of Torah that are meant not for the shelf, but for your life, for your table, for your nights when you cannot sleep. I want to close by speaking a blessing over you directly. Wherever you are watching this, whatever the number is that weighs on you, whatever the name of the creditor or the fear that sits in your chest every morning, Yehi Ratzon Milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, Sheyepachu Lifanecha Sha'are Habrachav Hayeshua. May it be the will before you, Lord our God and God of our ancestors, that the gates of blessing and salvation be opened before this person. May every chain of debt that is rooted in spiritual darkness be dissolved in divine light. May the path forward become clear. May the provision come from directions they have not yet imagined. And may they know in their bones that they are not forgotten, that they are seen, that the same God who parted the sea for an entire nation, who fed millions in a desert, who heard the cry of one man out of the depths thousands of years ago, that God hears them tonight. Go in peace, do the practice, and come back to tell me what opened.